Hi, I'm Jeff, and I want to talk to you today a little bit about 3D modeling. In this video, we're going to go over a couple of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about why 3D modeling is important to me and what we do here at LoisLab. And I'm going to talk a little bit specifically about the program that we're going to use for 3D modeling here at LoisLab and why I like to use it. And get a little bit of an overview on the interface to get everybody oriented. So we're all starting from the same place and we know how to get started in working in the program. In the next video, we'll do a short project together where we'll model an example part. And that's, I think, where we're all really going to start getting comfortable with the application and the interface. So why 3D modeling? 3D modeling is something that I'm pretty excited about. It's a technology that I use pretty much every day. In my own projects, technical projects, artistic pursuits, that sort of thing. And I find it really versatile. Maybe you're working on a school project, something in physics class, and you need to come up with a way to, mount one part to another part, or swing a pendulum, or propel an object. 3D modeling is a great way to create any sort of part or component you need for a project like that. Maybe you're doing an independent project that is to create a Mars rover and explore some terrain. You can design the parts you need to build your own sort of Mars rover type robot. This is a robot that we designed here at LoisLab for our own experiments, and the whole thing was 3D modeled and 3D printed, except of course for the electronic components. And we were able to make it modular, which means that we're able to extend it in any way that we need to. We can add additional parts or motors, any components we need to extend the features that it has. So those are a couple of examples. Another might be to create a replacement part for an object or a machine that's broken. There's really no end to it. And so I hope that these examples sort of illustrate the value of it. It's the closest that we're going to get, I think, to magic, in the sense that you can imagine any part that you need in your mind. And within a few hours of working in a 3D modeling program, and then with some sort of digital fabrication technology like 3D printing, you can hold that part in your hand. I find this a really powerful tool. So why Fusion 360? Well, I like to use this program because it's free for educators and students. You can sign up for an account on the website, you can download it, and you can get working in it right away. I use it mostly for technical part modeling, creating parts like the little robot that I just showed you, motor mounts and that sort of thing. But it's got a lot of other features that you can delve into if you're interested. It's got an entire sculpting environment, which is useful for things like industrial design, where rather than rigid geometry-based part design, you might want to do more sculpting and smooth modeling. There's a whole feature set around rendering and animation if you want to do flyovers of your parts or designs, or show how they go together. There's a CAM environment to allow you to do toolpaths generation for CNC. We're going to be using the parts of the program that let us save parts out for 3D modeling. So it's a really rich, versatile environment, and so if you learn it once, you can then use it for all sorts of future projects and applications. So it works for me. It's not the only program out there, but it's the one that we're going to center these lessons around. So hopefully that kind of gets us oriented a little bit. Let's take a look at the interface in Fusion, and we can see sort of how we're going to move around and how we're going to use it. And that, I think, is going to be helpful before we jump right in and start doing some modeling. So if you take a look at my screen here, I've got an example part open. This is part of a previous robot design that I worked on. And this is going to, give us the example that we need to move around in the interface and feel things out. Now, when you launch Fusion for the first time, it may not look exactly like this. I've got the grid lines turned on, which I find is helpful in visualizing the part. You can turn those on using this menu down below. And one other interface configuration I find really useful and I would recommend to you is to change the orientation of the z-axis. Now, if you're working in any digital fabrication technology, any common technology like CNC or 3D printing, the z-axis is vertical. And the default, or at least what used to be the default in Fusion, is, I think, for the y-axis to be up, and I find that a little disorienting, and it means you almost always have to reorient your parts when you're going to fabricate them. So if you want to change that like I have, go to the upper right-hand corner and click on your name and come down to Preferences. In the window that opens, when you go to General, about a third of the way down, there's an option here that says Default Modeling Orientation, and it may be set to Y up. Make sure it's set to Z up and then OK out. And that'll orient the Fusion environment to be analogous to how we typically work for digital modeling, or digital fabrication rather. So now let's take a look at the interface. Now across the top we have the toolbar, and this is where you're going to find the common tools for creating sketches and shapes, primitives, that sort of thing. We're going to talk about those more later, so if those terms don't really mean much to you yet, don't worry about it. And there's also a set of menus here for starting sketches and operations in those sketches. So when you have some time, take a look through the toolbar, and also when you hover over options in the toolbar, frequently Fusion will give you a pop-up tip on what that option does and what requirements it has and information like that. So you really can learn a lot just by looking through the interface and hovering over options. The built-in help is really, really valuable, and it's one of the quickest ways to learn what tools are available to you and how to use them. So I really recommend doing a little bit of an exploration. Now, over on the left-hand side here, we have the browser, and this is sort of a folder view or a tree view that shows a lot of the objects that you're going to be manipulating within Fusion. So sketches are sort of the two-dimensional sketch. I'm defining a term with a term, but you create sketches in 2 dimensions, and then you use an operation to create a 3D body from that sketch. Maybe you're extruding or revolving or something like that. Your sketches for your projects will show up under the Sketches folder. Under Origin, you'll have the axes, the X, Y, and Z axes, and then the planes described by combinations of those 2 axes. So the XY plane, the YZ plane, and the XZ plane. And those are the base planes that you'll be starting out and drawing your sketches on. And then as you build your objects, you'll have bodies, which are solid representations that come out of sketches, and then components, which are collections of bodies that you can use in assemblies. All of these terms we'll work through. You'll get comfortable with them. Again, don't worry about it too much if you're not familiar with those terms yet. And then the last key part of the interface I want to talk about is the timeline, which is here across the bottom. Now, any sketches you create, any operations you take on those sketches, like extrusions, manipulations like moving objects, mirroring objects, cutaways, chamfers, holes, all of these things will show in the timeline. And those features that you create can then be edited later on. And this is one of the key features in Fusion 360 that I find so valuable, is you go through and you create your model. And then as you need to refine or iterate that model, maybe moving a mounting hole or resizing a feature, you can go back and edit the features you created rather than having to recreate the entire model. And those changes will cascade down through. So iterations of parts is a very fast process. And so that's something we're going to learn about in a later lesson. But just for now, understand that the timeline is there, and if you execute an operation like an extrusion or something like that, and you want to change the value, like how far you extruded it, you can go and double click on the icon for that representation and change the value right there. Okay, so I think that covers why 3D modeling is important to us here at LoisLab, why we're using Fusion 360, and a quick overview of the interface. I'm going to stop this here. I'm going to start up in the next lesson, and we're going to go through the process of creating our first model, our first design. And that's going to give us a chance to see what the workflow looks like and actually work within the interface. So take a look at that. I'll see you soon.